In this episode, we talk about how government school teachers in Rajasthan are using their own money to set up makeshift classrooms so that children in their area can continue their education. We also discuss the Goa Police taking action against men who photograph foreign women without their consent. But we begin today by talking about how the India-US trade deal could impact Indian farmers. Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargava, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. It was on Saturday that India and the United States announced an interim trade deal to lower tariffs and deepen economic ties after nearly a year of negotiations. As part of this deal, the US finally rolled back the additional 25% tariff it had imposed on India over its purchase of Russian oil. The Trump administration has also put in place a mechanism now to monitor whether India directly or indirectly resumes importing Russian oil. However, India's Ministry of External Affairs has been somewhat ambiguous on this issue, offering only this as a response.
Ensuring the energy security of 1.4 billion Indians is the supreme priority of the government. Diversifying our energy sourcing in keeping with objective market conditions and evolving international dynamics is at the core of our strategy to ensure this. All of India's decisions are taken and will be taken with this in mind.
So for now, it appears we may have to wait a few weeks to see what course India ultimately takes. Though, in the meantime, another key aspect of this trade deal has been agriculture, especially since there were concerns that this agreement could lead to US crops and agricultural products flooding the Indian market. So to understand how valid these concerns are, we now speak with the Indian Express's Rural Affairs editor, Harish Damodaran. Harish, from the beginning, agriculture was perhaps the most contentious aspect of this deal. India has been very protective of this sector. But tell us now that this deal has been signed, what do we know about what India has allowed the US to do? What does the US get access to now?
Yeah, I think the US was quite realistic about India, okay? And it was fully alive to the sensitivities of India opening up its market comprehensively. I don't think any US negotiator really expected that India would completely open up, to imports of, say, genetically modified products or, soybean, maize, corn, etc. And actually, that's what has happened, So we haven't opened up our markets to all the products which everyone was fearing, like soybean, corn, which is the same thing as maize, ethanol for fuel purposes, cotton, dairy, poultry, etc. None of these have actually been opened. And what has been opened up instead is, some kind of, you can call it a derived products. Like, for example, we haven't allowed the whole soybean to be imported, but we have allowed soybean oil to be imported. Okay. We haven't allowed, say, corn to be imported, but we have allowed DDGS to be imported, Basically, DDGS is a derivative of corn. Like the Americans make ethanol, even India also makes ethanol from maize, from corn. So what remains after you extract ethanol is what is called the DDGS. It's also called distillers dried grains with solubles.
And can you explain to our listeners exactly what that is, what it is used for?
Yeah, see, it's like this, maize or rice, any grain, any cereal grain basically contains starch, right? And that starch is first converted into sugar, okay? And when I have the sugar, I then ferment it and I get basically alcohol. And then when I further distill the alcohol and I distill it to, say, 99.9% purity, that is what is called ethanol, And that ethanol, I can use it for blending with petrol or diesel or basically for fuel purposes. Now, after I separate the ethanol, everything, what remains is basically it is some kind of a, fermented grain, fermented, it's a mash, and that is very rich in protein. And which is why it is called, distillers dried grains with solubles, So it has protein content. If it is made from rice, it will have about a protein content of, up to about, say, 45%. In the case of corn DDGS, the protein content can go to about, say, 35%. So basically, it's a livestock ingredient, for making, like for, say, chicken feed or for cattle feed. you need a source of energy and you need a source of protein. So DDGS is a source of protein, just like corn by itself is a source of energy. So you can call it a cheap livestock ingredient, and it's a substitute for other protein sources,
And right now, a lot of this feed is being provided by soya bean derivatives from India, right? So will Indian soya bean farmers be affected by this?
Definitely. See, if I take the soya bean, when a processor basically extract oil, soybean has only about 18% oil content. So I take the oil out. So I get soybean oil. What remains is what is called the de-oiled cake. Okay. De-oiled cake is also called meal. And this is again very rich in protein. Okay. So if I'm a processor and I buy soybean from a farmer, right? I extract oil and what remains is the soya meal. And I sell both, and the realizations from that is what I get from processing soybean. So now if I am going to import cheap soybean oil and plus I am going to import a substitute to soybean meal, so automatically my ability to pay soybean farmers would go down, right? And so to that extent, yes, I think in this entire deal from what we can see, it's a Indian soybean farmer who is likely to get affected most from this deal. So from what I can see, that is the negative thing as far as I see from this US-India deal so far, that is.
And so DDGS, and especially the one that will now come from the US, that's a lot cheaper than what we get out of soybean?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. See, the US corn itself is much cheaper than Indian corn, Like the US average corn yields are about something like 11 tons, Whereas India is hardly, about say 3.5, 3.6 tons per hectare, So corn yields are very high and the US is the world's largest producer, the cheapest producer and the largest exporter. Not only of corn, but also of ethanol, which is basically derived from corn, and of DDGS, which we are talking about. So definitely, I think there is a lot of scope for the US to sell a lot of DDGS into India. See, because at the end of the day, what is happening in India? Our egg consumption is increasing. Our chicken consumption is increasing. Our fish consumption is increasing, right?
Yeah, and with incomes rising, people are consuming more protein as opposed to just cereals. And for this to continue, we need to properly feed these animals.
Absolutely. So the Americans look at the future. They look at 10 years from now, 25 years from now, 30 years from now, and India will be a large market. But I want to moderate that by saying that it doesn't mean that, Indian farmers are at the receiving end. Yes, soybean farmers will get affected. But on the other hand, our dairy farmers will benefit. Our poultry farmers will benefit. Our shrimp, aqua farmers will benefit because they're also farmers, right? It's just that they are animal farmers. They're not crop farmers, right? So they would benefit through cheaper feed ingredients, And I would say that if the Indo-US trade deal has been a lose-lose for the soybean grower in Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, and say Rajasthan, it has been a win-win for the dairy farmer in Gujarat or the shrimp farmer in Andhra Pradesh or the egg farmer in Telangana and Tamil Nadu. So it's not as straightforward as we think it is.
And Harish, anything else that stood out to you in this trade deal? Anything else you think might benefit us?
Yeah, so India has substantial agri-export interests in the US, right? And we were losing that market. 50% export duty would have been simply unsustainable when it comes to, exporting our shrimp, our basmati rice, our spices, many products, So we would definitely have lost out from that. So from that standpoint, if you look at it, our attempt has been to, defend our export interests, So we started off with, zero tariff on our products, right? Which went up to 50%, and now it has come down to 18%. So that is broadly what we have taken from the deal. And what we have given is, as I said, it's DDGS, it is soybean oil, seemingly minor, And then there are some other products, which are not very important to India from a production point of view, all these tree nuts, almonds, walnuts, pistachios, etc., where India is not a very substantial producer, but we are a very large consumer. Many say ice cream makers use almonds, right? I mean, they use pistachios, right? And the consumption of these again are growing, right? Even very poor households nowadays want to have badam and, So India has very strong consumer interest, I think, in these things, and which I think is not a bad thing. It is probably a classic win-win trade, So I would say that has been a win-win kind of a thing. Whereas in the other things, probably, as I said, for every dairy farmer who has benefited, there is also a soybean farmer who has lost.
And next we turn our attention to the condition of government schools in Rajasthan. It was in July last year that the ceiling of a government school in the Jhalawar district collapsed, killing a total of 7 students. The incident had triggered protests and widespread anger and had left residents of the Piplodi village fearful of sending their children back to school. In the aftermath, several school buildings in the district were actually declared unsafe and were later demolished. But now, government school teachers in Jhalawar have stepped in and have been using their own effort and funds to set up makeshift classrooms so that the students can continue learning. To understand the challenges they are facing and what the situation looks like on the ground, my colleague Niharika Nanda speaks to the Indian Express's Parul Kulshrestha, who reported on the story for the paper.
Parul, firstly, can you tell us what is the current status of the school which had collapsed back in July? Have the necessary repairs been done now, and have the children been able to go back there?
So after the school building collapsed, it was an upper primary school till 8th standard, from 1st to 8th. The school building collapsed and around 7 children lost their lives in it, and dozens of them were injured. So the debris has already been picked up and some of them are still lying around in that school premises, but the children refused to go back to the same property because they were scared of superstition that they will be missing their friends and all. It is a very traumatic experience for them. So the government understood that, and after that a new land is allotted to them around 1.5 kilometers away from the village, and a new school has been constructed. Until then, the students are studying in a temporary house which is donated by a village resident for the school.
And can you talk about what kind of action the administration took after this incident? Because we understand that a number of schools in the region were also deemed unsafe.
Yes, after this incident, it was a big shockwave for the entire state and the nation, and the government was under a lot of pressure. So they ordered to demolish a majority of the buildings that were dilapidated, of the school buildings and the rooms that were not functioning, the schools that were unsafe. They demolished majority of the schools, or if there are rooms which are unsafe, they were either locked or demolished in majority of the government school across the state, especially in Jhalawar, because they didn't want such incident to repeat again.
And so what has been happening to the children who used to study in these schools? Have they been able to attend classes?
So in majority of the cases, students are studying in makeshift tents and, with all those preparation that were or donation that was made by the villagers or the resident of that area. And in some schools where the rooms were shut down or, demolished, they are studying in the verandas or, in other classes they are being adjusted. And there was a guy called Singh. He had donated his home after the death of these children and the school building was collapsed. So in that, there are 2 rooms and a small veranda, and 8 classes are being held, and around 150 students are studying over there. It's a very congested space and not sufficient for school, but then they are just making adjustment till the new building is constructed. So that is the case right now. People are adjusting, teachers are adjusting, students are adjusting. Some money has been sent by the administration and the state government, but it is not enough to construct new school and new rooms.
But Parul, are these makeshift structures durable for every season?
No, they are not durable. Actually, I've mentioned in my story that a lot of teachers have pitched in to make at least temporary arrangements for classes to be held. So there are incidences like that, but they are not sufficient. In monsoon, there is a very big problem, water clogging and all, and that area is surrounded by forest. So it is very difficult for students, especially the young students, primary school students, to, travel to that far and study in the school. And even a lot of time in monsoon areas, especially in peak winters, it is very difficult for students to study. So it is not sufficient, and but still they are adjusting somehow.
Yeah, you've written that teachers have contributed financially for this makeshift arrangement. So tell us about the other schools where similar initiatives are taking place.
So I went to a lot of schools in that area, the area where the Piploti school building collapsed last year. surrounding that area, there are a lot of places, there are a lot of schools, primary schools, upper primary schools, even the higher secondary schools, where the government school building is absolutely like not usable or safe space for a class to be held. So their teachers are contributing from their own pockets. Even the villagers are contributing, but teachers are the one who are finding donations or donors all over the state, and they are contributing from their own pockets to build a room, or repair the roof of the school, or build even the office areas and the main gate of the school. They have done a lot. I have been to this one school where teachers in the last 5-7 years, they have contributed around 10 lakh rupees in that one school. And the time when I visited it, like last week, there was another room that they were building for more space. And they were like, we do not have that much money. I mean, they are government teachers, they are paid enough, but they also have their families and all. So it is not easy for them as well to, contribute. So it is kind of a very difficult situation for the teachers and the villagers who try to contribute, and they also ask help from the villagers. That area is a very impoverished area. The majority of the houses in that village are not pakka houses. There are not even many houses that have toilets in their home. So, you can imagine the kind of poverty that they live in. So they also cannot contribute a lot for the development of the schools. So teachers are somehow adjusting, but they are just, looking for the benefit of the children, and somehow they are contributing for the construction and, repair of the school.
So it is the teachers who are ensuring that education continues in the region.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Parul, you also had the opportunity of talking to some of the teachers. What did they have to say about the state of these schools?
See, I talked to the headmaster, and there was this one school which is just till class 1 to 5. They said they were running in a tent and what do they say, teen shed. So I asked them, so they said that, we contributed, there were just 2 teachers teaching 5 classes. And the students are very young, very small students, like from 1 to 5. And they said that after their school was demolished, after the Biplodi incident of last year, their school was demolished because it was not safe. The administration asked them to move 5 kilometers away in a bigger school. But the teachers refused because they know that if they move, the small young students of that area will not be able to travel that far, and their education is going to hamper. So they paid money from their pockets and, made the teen shed and plastic tents and everything. And it's very difficult situation. They said that, in rainy areas, it is not even possible to sit on the floor. And there were many teachers who were complaining about that, they cannot come forward and just complain about the government, to be honest, because they are the government employee. So they do whatever they can from their part for the education of the children. But they said that even they have to look after their families. So they don't have that much money to, contribute over there. So they wanted government to focus on the infrastructure development of the government school, which is absolutely negligent or not even a priority for the state government right now. So there has been a lot of complaint by teachers over there.
And since the incident, how have the parents been responding? Are they skeptical about sending their children to school? What does their situation look like?
So after the Pipalodi village incident where the school collapsed and 7 children died, the villagers of that area were very, very skeptical. They refused to send their children to government school. There are 5 to 6 teachers who are teaching in that school. They told me that they have to go and knock on each door of the village, and they have to ask permission from parents, and they request them to just send their children to school. But they were very skeptical, very angry, and very scared to lose their children. After that, for a long time, for 2-3 months, they used to go and teach individual children at their home, give them homework and all, try to convince them to send their children to the house that was donated by the village resident. And slowly, the trust was built. And, after that, I think 3-4 months after the incident, now the students are going to school. But a lot of them are still very traumatized, who have seen their classmates die. Even the siblings of the children who died last year, they're still very traumatized. Teachers told me that they celebrated 26th January, and a lot of children started crying over there because they were missing the old school and the siblings and the teacher and the classmates. So the trauma is still there amongst the children.
And Parul, looking ahead, what do teachers see as the way forward, since tents and rented homes are only temporary fixes, right?
The only solution of it is that we have to make infrastructure of the schools a priority. Even the government of Rajasthan has given in the state assembly that 56% of the government schools or the rooms in the government schools are either not safe to study or they need urgent repair. 56%, more than half of the rooms in the government schools in Rajasthan. So it is not a good situation to see, and a lot of lives are at stake, and if the education and the future of the children are at stake. So the only solution is to make it a priority and build and construct good infrastructure in that area. That is the only way that we can do it. Otherwise, it is not possible to, give quality education to the children.
And finally, we turn to the coastal state of Goa. For months now, Goa has been in the headlines over a range of issues affecting its tourism sector, from rising hotel prices and a lack of affordable public transport to establishments not following fire safety norms and reports of foreign women being harassed on beaches. In fact, when we talk about this last bit, just this week, 2 cases were reported in which Indian men were found to be taking photographs of foreign women on the beach without their consent. When we spoke to the Indian Express's Pavneet Singh Chadha, he told us more about it.
In one case, police detained 2 male tourists from Tamil Nadu who were clicking photographs of some foreign nationals and sort of trying to harass them at Baga Beach. In another instance, a foreign tourist was swimming in Kalangut Beach, and one person who was from Goa only, he sort of, without taking her consent, took out his phone, made a whole video, circulated it on social media. So police registered an FIR against the person.
And these cases appear to be becoming more frequent in the state and were reported at the start of the tourist season as well.
In one case, again, a similar instance of, 2 female tourists who were just taking a walk on the beach, and some men approached them and, they were trying to get too comfortable, trying to, touch them, forcing them to take photographs. So this has been happening, on and off during the tourist season. And the approach of the tourist department has also been to flag this to police to say that we need to ramp up patrolling, especially on the popular beaches along the coastal belt. In any case, the state has been struggling to get, lure as many foreign tourists to Goa if you compare it to the pre-pandemic level. So this is something that the state is very serious about when it comes to protecting the safety and security, especially of foreign tourists.
Now, responding to this, the Goa Police has said that anyone found infringing on the privacy of tourists will face action under the law, including being detained under preventive custody.
Under Section 170 of BNSS, earlier it was Section 107-151 CRPC, essentially, which allows police to arrest without a warrant, keep somebody under preventive custody to prevent a law and order situation. The idea here is that, anybody who comes to Goa, especially foreign tourists, they should be able to have their peace, and safety and security of tourists is paramount. And often what happens on beaches in Goa, you see, young men from other states trying to get too comfortable with the women tourists. So the idea here is to protect the safety and security of tourists and prevent anyone from infringing on their privacy.
You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and was produced by Niharika, Nanda and me, Shashank Bhargava. If you liked the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcast. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcast@indianexpress.com.